Hello and welcome everyone, this is Calebovitsch coming to you with another episode of Deck Check. Today we will be looking at the newest promo card, Gerrit, Throne Guardian, and taking a look at whether there is a deck that would suit the newest unit in any way, shape or form, this time in the Expedition format. For those of you who have not checked the newest promo card out, Gerrit, Throne Guardian, is a 3-cost Combri 2/4 soldier, with soldier not being a specifically nice or rather used unit type. This is a unit with endurance and a very unique effect that says when one or more units would be silenced, Gerrit gets +2 attack instead. So this is something similar to what we had in Leda's Apprentice, kind of, sort of, and Bastion of the Dawn's static ability that your units can't be silenced. Well, this one puts a small twist on that, because you want to be silencing things, and you want things to be silenced for Gerrit to be better. I mean, a 2/4 endurance for 3 is a rather basic stat line, but if you have been playing in the Expedition format recently, you know that this is a format of high rolls and fair cards no longer make the cut. So what can we do to make Gerrit good? Well, one of the things is obviously to put as many silence effects as we need into our deck to try and silence opposing units, and then Gerrit just grows. Well, silencing opposing units is a good strategy in and of itself, and we don't want to be nerfing that. So there is another thing that we can look at, and that one is, are our units getting silenced? And if you look at the Throne format, there is much more silencing going on there, but in Expedition there are also some effects that silence our units or units in general. There is one guy or gal, I think there is one unit that is the perfect companion, is the perfect tag team partner for Gerrit, Throne Guardian, and that is the previously underused Yojimba Ghostblade. This is a 3-cost Huru 0/6 unseen with plus attack equal to your maximum power, so if you play it, it usually is at least 3. A 3/6 for 3, which is a great stat line. When Yojimba hits the enemy player, you draw 2 cards, which is an amazing ability. This is double the effect of cards such as Sodi Spellshaper. But there is a downside to Yojimba, obviously, the one that made the card unplayable in the past, and that one is when the enemy player plays a unit, they silence Yojimba, which means that Yojimba is unfortunately usually turns out to be an 0/6 wall for 3. And we did have Campfire Watchman for 2 in just Primal, and that was not really played, so that had made Yojimba a very bad unit, especially in drafts. But with the inclusion of Gerrit, we have the tag team that can do a lot of things, because when Gerrit and Yojimba are both in play, if the opponent keeps playing units, they try and silence Yojimba, but they can't. And Gerrit's ability, when one or more units would be silenced, Gerrit gets +2 attack instead, so Gerrit grows. And if you have a 3-cost 4/4 endurance, that is just a great stat line that is even above things like Record Keeper, or whatever that Minotaur was called. But it's not easy being cheesy, or rather it's not easy being in the Triumphant Tag Team, because if you're just running these cards as a combo with one another in a 75 card deck with no ways of searching for one or the other, you're just gonna have a bad time more often than not. I.e. having one, not having the other. Well, Gerrit on his own works because he's still a unit, but Yojimba on its own does not really work well. So we need more cards to synergize with one and the other card, usually, for them to be good. And as I said, there are several other ways to make Yojimba work. One is Leda's Apprentice, a previously rather underused 2-cost Primal Unseen with 2 attack and 3 health. Leda's Apprentice can never be silenced, and your other cards can be silenced while you have her. So if you have Leda's Apprentice in play and you have Yojimba still cannot be silenced, still can attack through the opposition. One could also go for Bastion of the Dawn. The site with the static ability of your units can't be silenced, but I don't believe there is a lot of place in this deck for this card. This is a rather niche card. I have seen it, I have played it in one deck in the past, in the previous constructed expedition format in the tradition curse control-ish kind of deck, but wasn't even great in that one. Anyway, so we have both Leader's Apprentice and Gerrit working with your Jimba. Another way to make your Jimba work is to give it Aegis, but I believe that is rather left for the throne version of the deck. But there is also a way to just make your Jimba work on the turn you're playing the unit, and that is to give it Killer via Predator's Instinct, for example. So the 1 cost time spell that gives a unit Killer. A better card for this would have been Savagery, the 1 cost triple primal spell that gives one of your units Killer and Overwhelm, because then if your Jimba kills the opposing unit and overwhelms towards the opponent, then you're drawing a card still. But once again, that is for the throne version of the deck, and I just went with Expedition, because both of these cards and most of these cards are in Expedition, and well, it is quite stable here anyway. So we have all those things, and Gerrit, as I said, Gerrit works great with your Jimba in play, works on his own as well. I mean, he can also never be silenced, and if you look in Expedition for the silence effects, you can see that there are several being played. I mean, Entrancer is not being played, but Rectifier is played in Xenon Strangers. Where else? Edict of Korosh is sometimes played. Ali is sometimes played in the Huru Dying Sun Tapestry deck. You have Purifies, you have Armory's Choices, but you also have Hammers of Glory in Armory decks. And if someone decimates Shenra Speaks for reasons unknown, or for Display of Creation. So there are several ways of silencing units in an Expedition, but you're usually just playing Gerrit for the stat line and for the combo with your Jimba. So if we know that we are already running Combrai and we're running Huru, then we're in the tradition colors. And given that these are quite good mid-range units, I went with just making a tempo deck. A value tempo deck. So I tried to include just a medium, not a great number, but a medium number of high value units with a lot of spells and attachments strictly supporting them. So we can see a lot of 4-offs in this deck list for sure. So we have 4 copies of Crownwatch Paladin, the 2-cost Justice Paladin, that is a 2/2 Aegis Warcry, makes Yajimba and other things bigger when it attacks. Intrepid Longhorn, the 2-cost Combrai 33 Minotaur Mage with Mastery 6, play a random sigil from your deck. Remember, the sigil comes into play ready, so you can use that to power out some of your future effects. 4 copies of Leader's Apprentice, Gerrit, Yajimba. And well, we can, given that we are already running Predator's Instinct, our top end can and should support that strategy as well. And what other way to do, good way to do that than to include some Exalted units to give them Killer 2 and to make an Exalted Killer chain work. So 4 copies of Daring Griffin, the 4-cost double primal 3/1 after the nerf, which is kind of a bummer, but still, it is still a very good unit in mid-range decks. Flying Exalted Reckless, when the enemy player plays a spell, sacrifice this to negate it. You have to be careful when you know the opponent is running sites. I mean, usually the only 2 sites I've been seeing in Expedition right now are Traverse Farm and what was the other one? One was Traverse Farm, and the other one was a Profane Nexus, the Destruction one, the Sacrifice one. So if the opponent is running a site, remember they are playing 3 spells in a row, so Daring Griffin just negates one of them. Also 4 copies of Eli and Mizo, the 5-cost double Elysian 6/6 Explorer Dinosaur with Endurance and Mastery 12, play a copy of Eli and Mizo. So if Eli and Mizo, the base unit, gains a keyword such as killer or flying from Fearless Crescendo, or gets bigger via the war cries from Crownwatch Paladin, well, then the copy is bigger and or more killer as well, as also you might have seen in some of my previous Killa and Mizo videos. Alright, so we have 28 units, very good ones, ranging from 2 to 5, with 12, 8, 4, and 4 to create a nice curve. And we are also running a ton of ways to support them, with 4 copies of Permafrost to stun some opposing units. This is a 1-cost Primal Curse that does exactly that. We have 4 copies of Sodi Spell Shaper, which after the nerf is slightly slower because it is 3+2, not 2+2. When it comes to the cost, but it is still the +1/+1 Elysian weapon that says when the wielder hits the enemy player you get to draw a card, which is furthering the card advantage that we already have with Yojimba, but also has Spellcraft 2 of Play Equivocate, which is just bouncing an opposing unit into the opponent's hand and transforming it into a random unit with the same cost. Aside from that, we have 4 copies of Armory's Choice, the 2-cost Combrai fast spell that either gives one of your units +3/+3 and Overwhelm for a turn, or silences an attacking enemy unit and puts it into the enemy hand. But you have to be careful because that says silence, and if you have Gerrit in play, then you do put an attacking enemy unit into the opponent's hand, but Gerrit gets bigger instead of that unit being silenced. So you have to be careful about that. We have 4 copies of Predator's Instinct. We have 4 copies of Fearless Crescendo. And I believe this 1-cost Justice fast spell, the Market fast spell, is the best one, especially when it comes to mid-range decks, because the 3-cost slot, the 3-cost card that you can grab from your market is really filled to the brim with just great options, but also you get to give one of your units flying, or one of your opponent's units flying if you need to do that as well. Now for the market, we have the usual follow-up of Wind Conjuring, 3-cost double Justice fast spell that readies a unit. That unit gets +4/+4 and endurance in a turn, so it takes out all the stun effects, all permafrost from it, etc. But also, if you're running enough power, you can decimate 1 max power to invoke a Justice, preferably to get a good card more often than not. We have here a Vanquish, the 3-cost Justice slow spell that kills a unit with 4 attack or more. We have Swirl Descents, the 3-cost time fast spell that puts an enemy relic, curse, or unit with flying on the bottom of its owner's deck. And, well, if you are willing to sacrifice 4 power and 2 cards, remember you can Fearless Crescendo an opposing unit to give it flying, and then when it is flying, if it is flying, you get to Swirl Descent, play Swirl Descent on it, put it on the bottom of the opponent's deck, and just be very happy about that. We also have 1 copy of Master's Blade, the 3-cost +1/+1 weapon, with the additional +1/+1 for each of the wielder's battle skills. One of them usually being flying because, well, you're playing that crescendo, but also Spellcraft 1 to play Fall Short to kill an enemy unit without any battle skills. And when you reach Mastery 7, you get to invoke Justice, which is done more often than not. And last but not least, this is just me testing the card out. This is Display of Tradition, the 3-cost Tradition display, as the name says, that you either get to put an enemy unit into its owner's hand and increase its cost by the highest cost among your relics, which is 0, so you're not using it for that mode, or you get to silence the enemy void, unless Gerrit is in play, then it just gives +2 attack to Gerrit, or you give one of your units +2 health and killer on fast speed, and the third mode is why I have it here. So this is also a very good combo with Elan Misa or Daring Griffin, just giving units killer. Rounding out, we have the power base of 2 Tradition Chant, the Seek power that gets you one of these sigils that you're running in this deck, but later in the game you can also decimate to invoke a random card from these 3 colors. You're running 11 sigils, 10 seats, and 4 banners, and you usually want one of at least 1 sigil in hand so that your seats come into play ready. Alright, one card interaction that you might be wondering about, that I fortunately tested in one of my games, is Okay, so what happens if you have Gerrit and Yojimba in play? So if something's getting silenced, Gerrit gets bigger instead, and Yojimba, when the enemy player plays a unit, they silence Yojimba. But you also have Leader's Apprentice that says your other cards can't be silenced while you have Leader's Apprentice in play. So if you have Leader's Apprentice and Gerrit in play, and for example Yojimba, and the opponent plays a unit, wants to silence Yojimba, does Gerrit get bigger or not? And the answer is yes, Gerrit gets bigger. So your unit doesn't get silenced off of Leader's Apprentice and off of Gerrit, but Gerrit does get that +2 attack, so it triggers as well. Alright, this deck plays like a tempo deck. Don't get me wrong, this is not a good deck. This is not a great deck. This is not a good deck. This is right now somewhere around tier maybe 2.5, maybe 3. But this is both the best use of Gerrit Throne Guardian and the best use of Yojimba Ghostblade that I have found in the Expedition format. So if you like those two cards, if you like the Triumphant Tag Team, then you might want to check this deck out. If you want to go for something more competitive, then I believe there is a few other decks or a couple of other decks that you should try out before this one. But if it so happens that you did open up 4 copies of Yojimba and don't know how to use it, well, here's a way. And if you want to see how it works in action, let me show you a couple of games with this deck. Alright, this is a rather mediocre hand, which does have a ton of power, but we only have a 2-drop and a 5-drop, so this is usually a redraw. We don't want 5 power at the start, and this is also a bad hand because it only has primal and not all 3 colors. This is much better because it has both Leader's Apprentice and Yojimba, so that I can show you how these 2 cards work in tandem. And I believe I should have started on Combri Banner, not on this one, but it's not a huge difference, to be honest. Opponent seems to be playing Menace colors, which would usually suggest a dragon-based control deck. And we are starting off with Leader's Apprentice, and unless the opponent can sear Leader's Apprentice or play Voprex Choice on us and follow it up with a unit for Yojimba, we're just gonna draw some cards. So playing Combri Banner when we can into playing Yojimba. That is a good way to get the game going. So Yojimba already is 3/6 and can grow even bigger because Yojimba, remember, has +1 attack for each of your max power. Equal to your max power, rather. Opponent is going for Dragon Forge, which would suggest something along the lines of Eclipse Dragon usually, or maybe something even more dastardly. And it is Carve It Redeemed, the 4-cost now after the discount from Dragon Forge, 6/6. Fortunately, I was able to draw Fearless Crescendo, so right now I can just play a power. Play Fearless Crescendo on preferably my Yojimba, so it is flying. If the opponent is running any O3s with Exalted or something like that to stop my units. I'm playing Vanquish because Swirl the Sands is fast and Vanquish is slightly slower than that. Attacking for 6, drawing 2 cards, another Crescendo and a Permafrost, which means if the opponent cannot kill Leader's Apprentice and then play a unit to silence Yojimba, we should be good. Opponent is thinking on what to do and how to proceed, and is playing Skylord Tolek as a 5/5 dragon now, trying to silence Yojimba but can't. So Seed of Progress, playing Sodi Spellshaper on the other units, so we're not putting all our eggs in one basket, so that Leader's Apprentice can draw us 1 card and Yojimba can draw us 2 cards. This is Permafrost, another Spellshaper and another power, which means our hand is rather full of answers, not threats, but we do have lethal on board, and unless the opponent can get rid of both of our units, we should be good here. And it is Carve It, Solar Dragon, so we can do one of a couple of things. Well, for sure we could give this one flying. We can trade off a Justice Sigil for something like Swirl the Sands and just attack here, or we can play the power, play Sodi Spellshaper on it. Remember, playing that power gives Yojimba +1 max attack, so we can attack for 9, and this was rather an easy game. So yeah, let me show you another one. Alright, we have game number 2. And this one is from one of my streams, so we will see some ongoing Twitch chat commentary. This is also a version, an earlier version, that was running Shenra Unbreakables instead of Crown Watch Paladins. And we can see in the second hand that we do have the tag team combo of Gerrit and Yojimba, so that's a huge keep. I'm also thinking of keeping that tradition chant and just using it for the invoke on around turn 4. So let's just start with some power. As I said, not using tradition chants, just going for max value off of that card. And that is the reason why these chants in the 5/3 color combinations are much better than just plain old Seek powers. This is a rather slow start with just turn 3 Gerrit into turn 4 Yojimba. Hopefully both will survive. Well, if I did have Leader's Apprentice on 2, I would obviously go for Yojimba on 3 instead of Gerrit, but hey. Alright, so the opponent, we can see the opponent is hovering over Gerrit, taking a look at what the card does. And thinking about their next play. And it is Conservatory Alchemist. So this is looking like an aggro Feln Unseen Curse deck-ish type of thing. Right, Tradition Chant with Decimate, I'm guessing. Grabbing something here and getting, well, right now I can see that I have chosen the wrong influence. Clutch of Talents is a rather good card, I would say. Also, we can just attack through here. Because Gerrit does have endurance and, well, has a decent enough stat line here to survive. Opponent is playing Seed of Cunning into Dark Talon Wyvark, trying to silence Yojimba but can't, and Gerrit just gets bigger. Omri's Choice is a very good pickup here. But first let's attack with both cards, because if Yojimba connects, then we might draw something that we want to play other than Leader's Apprentice. Opponent is not blocking, which means the tag team connects for 8 and we get to draw 2 cards. And this is plain and simple Intrepid Longhorn and Leader's Apprentice. Now, if the opponent plays a unit, and I remember they will, you can see that Leader's Apprentice and Gerrit are both in play, and Yojimba, all of them are in play. So no silence is coming towards Yojimba, but Gerrit still gets bigger. So opponent is also playing Tome of Horrors and attacking us with a 3/3, which means they are milling us for 3 cards and milling till they find a unit. And the opponent is on 15 and we have 15 attack in place, so we can play Permafrost on one blocker, Permafrost on the other blocker, and attack for victory. Quite easy when it works, if it works. So yeah, let's go to game number 3 now. Okay, 1 power hand, you can leave us now. Let's find something more useful, and once again we have the tag team of Gerrit and Yojimba. So you all know this is going to be a keeper. This is just a showing of, if you have them, does it work? Obviously the deck can win in other ways because it is running a ton of other stuff. Yes, tag team with the killer attached. And I remember there were some wrestling references during this match as well. Opponent is finally starting on a Praxis banner. So let's go for banner first, hopefully to draw a sigil so that our seeds come into play not depleted. We know opponent has a sigil already and they're playing a Power Stone as well. to ramp it up a bit more. And we're drawing a pair of Elas and Mesos. Traverse Farm. Okay, looks like Praxis Strangers. And this is a rather slow hand. It's a very slow hand. Grotov's Stranger. Now, there are several ways we can deal with that. But first, let's go for Gary into Combray Banner. I mean, we could technically go for Fearless Crescendo into Vanquish if I had the 4th power not depleted. But hopefully the opponent does not have their own Predator's Instinct to play on their Grotov Stranger, and it's just gonna draw 2 cards. Just draw 2 cards. See, Yojimba? That's what wrestlers should be doing. Alright, seek power. And Crimson Firemaw. Okay, so this tells me I want to go Fearless Crescendo on my unit, get rid of probably one Eli and Meso, or one of the killers, but probably one of Eli and Mesos, and get Master's Blade, because right now we are going to have 4 power, so we can play Master's Blade on our flyer with Endurance, making it into a 5/7, kill the 7/7 Grotov Stranger, and attack the site. So right now the opponent either loses the dragon or they lose the site, and hopefully they lose the site. And Gerrit still has Endurance, which means he can be back to block the 5/4. Alright. And we are getting our Master's Degree on the blade. Ramba, doesn't change a lot. Nahid's Distillation, sure. At least the opponent's not doing much. Alright, so 4 power. That means we can go for Yojimba. We can play Predator's Instinct on Yojimba, give it Killer. The 4/6 is going to attack their 5/4. Our unit will survive, and Gerrit can attack the opponent for 5 and get a Mastery done. And invoke as a card. And that card is going to be Reinvigorate for a trick, probably. We don't have Triple Justice for Reyna, and Soulburst Scimitar doesn't seem to be the greatest here. So Yojimba has been tagged in. Kairos. Alright. The opponent is drawing 4 cards, trying to silence Yojimba, but instead they're just buffing Gerrit. It is the Mistrust Complex, or Mistrust Syndrome. Now, Fearless Crescendo on Yojimba, so Yojimba can attack, and we can grab... Well, it should have gone on Yojimba, honestly. I was going for Swirl Descent, but we also have a Vanquish there, so this was a small mistake. But we want to connect for 11 anyway. And draw 2 cards. Both being power, cool. And we can look for some other cards from the market as well. Now, depending on what the opponent does, and they have a ton of power, they can do one of several things. Well, they are making Gerrit bigger, that's for sure. So Gerrit just goes for lethal now. Crimson Firemaw, sure. And Gerrit is even bigger. And I finally want to give you a Jimba Flying and go for that Vanquish. But we have several other ways to deal with this situation as well. And I wanted to go for the full tag team, so I went for Ela and Mizo to give it Killer, to tag in both Ela and Mizo so that they can kill the dragon and attack for 17 and just win the game right here, right now, and draw 2 cards in the process. Alright, these were some really high-rolled games, so let's get back to the studio and talk a bit more about the deck. Alright, you have seen 3 games with the Triumphant Tag Team, both the older version with Shenras instead of Crownwatch Paladins and the more recent one with Crownwatch Paladins in tow. Unfortunately, the deck, as I said, is not a tier 1 or a tier 2 deck right now, or at least not in my hands. Maybe someone can make it better. Right now, it is, as I've already said, the best way, in my opinion, to utilize both Gerrit and Yojimba, together or apart. So yes, that's the thing about the current expedition format. I mean, we might see some card nerfs in the near future after the Aftershock ECQ, and then maybe, just maybe, this deck is going to find its place there. There is also a chance that actually in the Throne format, this deck might be better because it has some different tools, some better tools to utilize, like at least those savageries. I'm not sure right now. I've only played this one in Expedition, but you obviously are encouraged to test it out in Throne with some improvements as well. As far as Yojimba's downside goes, there are a couple of ways to go around it. Once again, you have Gerrit, you have Leader's Apprentice, you have Bastion of the Dawn, or you can just give Yojimba Aegis time and time again. So we can be running stuff like Parul's Choice, and then you can be running some more curses, like maybe one Avigraft, etc., etc., like a restrained action here maybe as well. Maybe that's the way to go. I don't know. I might want to test it in the near future, or I'll just leave it up to you, dear viewer. Alright. This is going to be it for the video. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, if you're enjoying the show and would like to show some support to this channel, click on subscribe. This video has been brought to you, aside from me of course, by NordVPN, and right now you can get 70% off NordVPN and get your additional month for free if you're going for the full 3-year package. Just go to nordvpn.org and use the code Calebovitsch on checkout, or you can just click the link in the video description below. Thank you for watching. See you next week. Calebovitsch out.